is Riley, and the Refutation speech, the claim that I'm going to be responding to is playing video games is beneficial to human health. The guy who made the speech, his secondary claims are video game playing aids in brain development. The second one, video game playing helps us see better, and his final one, playing video games improves our problem-solving skills. Back to that first secondary claim, video game playing aids in brain development. From an updated source, last year, an experiment was done by Neurology Now by the medical doctor Amy Paturo, and she found that after MRIs done on studies of 18 college students, who spent an average of 10 hours a day online, primarily playing games. These students, compared with a control group who spent less than 2 hours a day online, showed that gamers had less gray matter, which is the thinking part of your brain. And also in the Huffington Post, the American Academy of Pediatrics published a study that found that depression, anxiety, and poor grades in school may be the result of too much gaming. This is due to the fact that games are starting to take over people's lives after they start playing them, and that they lose their social standings. They start wanting to play games more and start neglecting their homework, their studies, and it takes a toll on their school and their social life. The secondary claim, the second one, video game playing helps us see better. Video game playing does in fact help us see better. However, Amy Paturo warns that while stimulating brain regions that control vision and movement, other parts of the mind responsible for behavior, emotion, and learning become underdeveloped. With an increase in vision, that'll help, but you lose your social behavior, emotional behavior, and your learning gets underdeveloped because you're just focusing on one game all the time. You're not going out and seeing different stuff. And then a study published in the scientific journal Nature showed that playing video games releases the neurotransmitter dopamine. The amount of dopamine released while playing video games was similar to what is seen after intravenous injection of the stimulant drug amphetamine, which is used to treat ADHD and depression. This dopamine is a natural drug that our body gives off, and it gives you a natural high, making you like what you're doing at the moment because you want to feel good and it makes you feel happy. And so after you feel this natural high, you want to keep getting it and keep feeling better. So what happens is people start getting addicted to games and they keep on playing it and want to keep doing it because they get this natural high. And then responding to the third secondary claim, playing video games improves our problem-solving skills. This is found true that it does, in fact, improve our problem-solving skills, but on multitasking. And that Amy Paturo found that children who spent more than 2 hours a day, 2 hours of screen time per day, were twice as likely to have trouble paying attention. It analyzed both elementary and college-level students, which multitasking is a useful skill, but if exercised excessively, it can also become a problem. And when kids are used to multitasking and processing information simultaneously, they found out that they had trouble focusing on a classroom type study, which they couldn't focus on a lecture or a specific one subject. And then also refuting playing video games improves their problem-solving skills. Totally different. The bigger problem is that Health Central has brought enlightenment to the fact that roughly 1/3 of Americans are obese, and this is largely blamed on bad diets and sedentary lifestyles. However, a report in Journal of Adolescence directly linked childhood obesity and inadequate activity levels to video games. In children ages 1 to 12, results indicated that while television use was not related to children's weight status, video game use was. And in my conclusion, instead of video game playing aiding in brain development, it stunts growth and negatively impacts emotional behavior. And although video games do help us see better, it underdevelops the part of the brain responsible for learning and behavior. Playing video games do improve problem-solving skills. However, playing video games has been directly related to childhood obesity and poor concentration. So video gaming is unhealthy, but since it is a main part of everyday life and we can't get rid of it, we must use it in moderation for the sake of people's health.
Probably. Grab a rubric. You guys want to go take off? Yeah.
All right, Riley. You start off structurally fine, identifying the main proposition, the secondary points. You're going to go through those secondary points. You do an excellent job labeling them as you get to each of them. I appreciated that. There's usually kind of a good, quick summary of what the advocate's argument was on those points, so that makes it clear what it is that we're supposed to be looking for. On the first point, I think you've got a very good counterclaim here on less gray matter, that it is having a negative effect on people's ability to grow emotionally. And I thought the emotional consequences are good counterclaims on that particular point. They apply very well. So you've got a good counterclaim on the harms on that first point, and I thought that that worked pretty well. What there isn't much of is a discussion of whether or not the advocate is making a fair reasoning from their evidence and whether or not their evidence is any good. So, I mean, you don't really respond to those particular points. You respond to the general issue and the counterclaims, which are good. And that tends to be what your answer is on most of these points, is a good counterclaim. And I think you do have good counterclaims over those points, but sometimes you want to put them into perspective. So, for example, on the point where you're talking about the people's ability to see better, I mean, you basically concede that. You say there's no dispute about that. But I think you want to diminish it a little bit more and say, you know, how much greater is the improvement in their ability to see? The fact that you can detect a movement out of the corner of your eye a fraction of a second earlier because you played video games, why is that important? How does that matter? That's not nearly as significant as some of the negative consequences are, because that's mostly where you're going on each of these points, is you're coming up with a counterclaim with a negative consequence. So let's do more of the contrast on those particular points. Maybe you didn't find any direct criticism of the research that was done on the particular benefits that the advocate talked about, and so it's a little bit harder to directly attack the evidence, but you can maybe ask some questions and give some presses to go along with it. Like I said, I thought you did an excellent job coming up with counterclaims that applied to those particular points and finding evidence on those points. Now at the end, I might be left with a question though. If I was deciding whether or not I want my kids to play video games, do I think it's a safe thing for them to do? I say, well, they're going to develop problem-solving skills, but they may also develop attention deficit issues here, which is more important for me to worry about. That's I think, one of those places where you've made the argument, so you want to make a comparison here. Tell us why, you know, a problem. First, you tell us there are lots of ways to get problem-solving skills that don't require video games, and you know that. Developing ADHD or some other thing is really problematic for people's ability to learn in other contexts. And so it might be a great way to learn as long as we can put everybody's lessons and education into a video game format. We're screwed if they have to learn in any other kind of context and develop, you know, solutions to problems that way. And that's going to be a problem. You know, I'm mostly looking at the stuff, what would strengthen your argument? Because I don't have a problem with the arguments that you made. I thought that they were good, solid arguments. I'm just trying to say, how else could you make this argument even more effective than the ones that you had? All right, thank you.